Ladies, it's good to have you back in the house if you were on retreat last week. We were lost without you. It was amazing to have you back. It's March Madness, also known as the most wonderful time of the year. And in 2016, Dennis Clifford, any Dennis Clifford fans? Anyone? Is there one Dennis Clifford fan? Yep. You will be a fan in a moment. He gave a post-game interview after playing his last game in March Madness. And in the media, it's one of the most memorable interviews I've ever seen. Take a watch.
Cliff, what are you going to take away as your best memory from playing basketball at Boston College?
Probably just like going out to eat.
It's wild. Going out to eat. All the blood, sweat, tears. Going out to eat. That was it. You know, let's just close in prayer. I'm off the stage. I do find it meaningful that his greatest memories were actually not about the game. They were about being at the table. It's why this table, by the way, is sacred. It's why when Jesus gave us a practice, he gave us the table. At the table, we remember what he's done. At this table, we remember who we are. And at this table, we remember to come to him for everything that we need. That Jesus said, give us this day our daily bread. Let me just begin with the question, what do you need from God right now? And we live in such a culture where it's almost a shame to feel needy and interdependent. Our whole nation is built on this idea of independence, and I get it, but that creeps into all of our lives where we feel like we're not allowed to be interdependent or dependent on the one who is our maker. And so there's a shame that comes in with that. There's a hiding, a pretending, a comparison. I'm going to talk about that today. Give us this day our daily bread. It does include bread, and it's even bigger than that. What do you need right now? Emotionally, psychologically, physically, familially, relationally, vocationally. Where is there need in your life? And actually, how is that need an invitation to grow in your spiritual life? That maybe for God, your need is not a problem. Maybe for God, your need is the invitation for a deeper life, one that's far more dependent and less resistant to the power and presence of your maker. Today, I want to talk about a few things. I want to talk about for and through. It's good prepositions. I want to talk about snakes and scorpions. Great name for a heavy metal band, by the way. Amy, I don't know if you get on that. But I want to begin with Ben and Ben. Ben, true story, he was a 7-year-old boy, and he had been in and out of various foster homes when he was finally placed with a stable family that were committed for the long haul. And his previous home had been one of food insecurity, often waiting for like days in between meals. And so he had this like history of hunger pains, and that was real for him up until 7. He got that, he felt that. That was something that was real and caused all sorts of anxiety in him. And it was evident to the psychologist that he met with, all the stuff, right? And it was different though with the new parents that were creating a long-term stability for him, Sarah and Mark. Because Sarah and Mark kept a refrigerator full of food and they served 3 meals a day. And Ben's experience up until that point had taught him that food from the night before would probably be gone by the morning. So you better get in on it while you can, because it's not going to be here when you get up tomorrow. And so every morning when Sarah would go into his room after he was gone for school, he found food tucked into Ben's pillowcase. She even found food stuffed inside his shoes, because so fearful was he that it wouldn't be there and he would go hungry. But here was the really cool invitation here, the reversal of his pattern was that instead of correcting him, Sarah gave the child a plastic bin that would sit right beside his bed. And he could fill it the night before with whatever he wanted because he had trouble sleeping through the night. So in the night, if he woke up, he would see that the bin was full and he would have snacks for the rest of the day. And so for the first few weeks, Ben kept the bin overflowing with snacks, which makes me think of Costco. Remember, the snacks aisles are amazing. By the way, does anyone know these guys? Right? They say organic, so I imagine they're healthy. They're not. They're amazing. This is what I imagine filling my bin with. But the boy would wake up every single night to find it full. And day after day, week after week, month after month, eventually, as he found the snacks full the next morning and the kitchen pantry still full, Ben got rid of the bin and started sleeping through the night. Now, don't miss this, because here's the point. The meaning of the story isn't really about the reality of hunger. The real meaning of the story is about the reliability of the caregiver. That's where the healing really comes in, is that there's a kind of healing for the boy when he begins to believe that his parents prove to be dependable. And it leads to all sorts of risk, that he's safe even when the bin is no longer available, that he knows and trusts that what he needs will be there when he needs it. And that's really where the miracle happens in the story. So when Jesus prays, "Give us this day our daily bread," he is, in my sense, to hand that to us and to say, hey, I dare you to pray this. This is what I pray when I'm with my Father. I'm inviting you into my prayer life to pray like I pray, which is bananas to think about. Jesus, every rabbi would have their prayer that they would teach their disciples. And Jesus says, this is the one I pray when I'm with the Father. I pray, hey, Father, give me my daily bread because I don't know where it's coming from and I'm dependent on you. I'm not just gonna pull out the cheat code because I'm God and man. I'm not some sort of God man that's just kind of pulling out tricks out of my pocket. I'm dependent on you. And I want my people to be dependent on you because that's what creates the relationship. That's what creates the depth, not the independence, but the interdependence with you, Father. That's where the intimacy comes from, the desperation of needing you. So when Jesus prays this, I think what he's doing is he's putting God's reliability to the test. And that's something. To actually test someone's character in this way, to say, I'm gonna pray this, and if you don't come through, I don't know what that means, but I'm gonna have the audacity to really mean this and to be dependent on you. I think what Jesus is inviting into is to really get clear about what kind of God we're dealing with. And I want you to think about that in your own life. I mean, some of us are raised in the church, whatever, and we don't really think critically about, do I believe this stuff? And what kind of God am I dealing with? And do I just say the liturgy, or do I inhabit the story of the gospel and try to live this thing out of the power and the might of God? Am I actually dependent on him to get me through the day? What kind of God are we dealing with? Is this God good or evil? That's helpful to know in your life. Is this God present or distant? That's helpful to know. Most of us function as atheists, that we claim to live some sort of life in faith. I don't know that I position myself every morning in a way that I need God to actually come through in my life, where I'm a functional atheist in much of my life. Is this God caring or stoic? That's helpful to know. I can tell you how many people are raised believing God's sort of indifferent to the pains of this world, to what's going on right now in so many areas of brokenness. Is this God able or powerless? Many people claim to believe in God, but when pressed, most I think would admit that they live as if this God might be angry at worst, but at best is probably distant. I think that would be the majority of American Christianity, a kind of distant God that isn't really that invasive and present in my life, that God, maybe the creator, but the rest is sort of on me. God made the world, but I gotta perform and produce, otherwise I'm in big trouble. And there is a cooperation there, I'm not suggesting that. But Jesus' prayer invites us into something different. We talked about this from time to time. It's, I think, one of the most profound quotes by A.W. Tozer, who says that what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. If you think that God is distant, stoic, angry, I don't know if that's the kind of God that you warm and kindle your heart around in the morning when you are drinking your coffee and wondering how to set about the schedule of your day. It changes things based on the kind of God that we're dealing with, which brings me to snakes and scorpions. In Luke 11, Jesus says, which of you fathers, if your son asks for a fish, will give him a snake? Or if he asks for an egg, we'll give him a scorpion? I mean, what a terrible dad. And Jesus is saying there's like all these constructs in your head about what you think is God, what God is like. And let me just tell you, like, as much as a dad wants to be awesome, like, God is so much better than any dad in this room, particularly me. Like, if you think you care about your kid, imagine God, the creator of it all, who shaped you in the womb. Imagine how this God feels about you. And that's the thing as a pastor, that I walk with people all the time. And I don't know that people get that at a visceral level, the way God truly feels about you, the way God truly thinks about you. I think our minds would be blown. Every line of this prayer, of the Lord's Prayer that we've been walking through slowly, every line you could reinsert the first line all over again. That you would say, like, our Father, we say our Father who is in heaven. Our Father, forgive us our sin. Our Father, bring heaven to earth. Our Father. You can go back to this opening line. It's almost like that is the line that you can insert all the way through. He's saying the kind of God that we're dealing with when it comes to daily bread doesn't give scorpions and snakes. It's one that understands need and wants to be present and wants to deliver that need. I can tell you one of the greatest privileges of my life is when my daughter confesses a need that I'm overjoyed to give. But it's like, yes, I would love to do that. That would be wonderful. I remember, not in my notes, it just came to me a few months ago. She broke her iPad. She cracked or something, I don't know how. But she was afraid to tell me. And I remember thinking, like, why would she give, what in my history has led her to think that somehow, like, I'm gonna be really angry? Like, she was afraid. It wasn't like, shoot. It was like, my dad's gonna be mad. And I remember when she told me, it was like this moment, and I don't kill them all, but this one was pretty good, where it was like, okay, like, I could go a couple routes here. And it was like, what if I totally like messed with her neurology? And it was just like, that's okay. And she was like, what? It's like, I thought you were giving me a scorpion, right? She didn't say that, but that's the idea, is that what we carry in our hearts about how we think this God is going to respond or what we think this God has for us has a lot to do with how we live. Has a lot to do with the things we carry and the things we suppress and conceal. Did you know that Caesar Augustus, by the way, wanted to be known as father to the world? Pater Patriae? That was one of his titles he gave himself. That Egypt actually in the Roman world, one of the reasons Rome continues to conquer isn't just to subdue the world, but they needed food supply and they wanted to control the food supply. So Egypt becomes what's called the breadbasket of the Mediterranean. That the whole landmass around the Mediterranean Sea, they believe belonged to them, and they could sort of exploit what they wanted to feed their people because he needed to feed the growing populace of Rome. And so Egypt became a place where they could grow wheat and actually produce it, because the idea was this: Caesar wanted his people to be dependent on them, to be dependent on him, because if he could fill their bellies, he could have their hearts. And he could oppress them subversively and get them to do his bidding because their bellies were full and their entertainment was always ongoing in the gladiatorial arena. Bread and circuses, they call it. Jesus, in essence, is saying to this, and it's a laugh and spit on the Roman world when he says it. He's saying, don't look to Rome to feed you. Your power is not in your politicians and your institutions. Your power is in your provider. And you have a heavenly Father who won't give you scorpions when you ask for bread. So pray, our Father who is in heaven. Pray, our Father, give us today our daily bread. I close with a couple things. The first is this. This prayer is for you. I know we sit here and it feels like I don't feel connected to that prayer. I feel like I can just go to the grocery store. Let me name some myths of Mount Pleasant for a moment. I've been here 6 years, and I'm so thankful to be here, hopefully for decades to come. I love this place. And some of the things that I've noticed around here is that there's some myths about Mount Pleasant. And I just need to name those because I think there's a lot of assumptions about this place. And here's just a couple. A couple of the myths about Mount Pleasant. Everybody has a boat. It's a myth. Everybody has a dream home. It's a myth. Everybody has a second home. That's a myth. Everybody drives fill in the blank. That's definitely true for some people. And that's perfectly fine. That's between them and God. But some truths about Mount Pleasant, many people live paycheck to paycheck. Many people feel the pressures of debt on a daily basis because the cost structure here is crushing. Retirement is not a reality for many people in this room. And comparison is really hard for all of us. There's two things I know that we all share in common. It's our need for grace, and that comparison is real. And that feels heavy, and it drives us further into the bondage of debt. And it's hard. And then assumptions get made about our lives, that we're all just doing great when things that we carry are so difficult and heavy. And though we all in many ways are blessed and privileged, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying we're not. I just want to acknowledge that there's real need in this room. I also want to acknowledge just real need just like a couple blocks south of this space that we're meeting in. There's like real free lunch program happening in public schools because people are in need. That's like a real thing, that there's anxiety right now present in the people around us about the future. And I just want to name that. I want to name that you matter and that Jesus sees you. By the way, it's one of the reasons we have a mercy fund. Not only do I know a lot of you give to other things in this world, which we're like, yes, let's do that. I mean, one of the ways that we give here is not just for Haiti and Honduras, but a fund that comes out of a percentage of every dollar that's given for people in real need that we don't talk about because we want to protect people's honor and dignity, but we're able to help people because people are in need even in this church. And so things happen all the time that you don't even see the fruitfulness of ways that you give. It's incredible. And that's what the church should be doing. We should be a sort of repository for mercy. And that's what we want to be in our community. So I just want to suggest this. This prayer is for you. This prayer is for you. Give us this day our daily bread. God is your Father who promises to supply you with what you need, and he doesn't give scorpions. So here's the thing. What do you need this morning? It's not a problem. It's an invitation for God to give God in your life. The second thing is this. This prayer is through you. This prayer is through you. There are those with ample resources in life who are invited to become an answer for other people's prayers. So one of the things I love about this is that Jesus is inviting his people into becoming solutions to the problems of the world. It's a beautiful invitation for us. I've heard of countless times that surprise checks get placed in mailboxes, or all the times where groceries anonymously get delivered and no one knows where they came from, that there is no greater joy on earth than providing in abundance for someone else's need. But the kinds of people who become answers to other people's prayers and they don't even know it, have learned a secret. That it is possible to have resource and not know this secret. And there is possible to have resource and to know a secret. And the secret of the mystery of the gospel is a secret called contentment, which is not trending in social media. Contentment says, I don't need any more. I have enough. And there are others in need that I can be of service to. That next whatever is not going to bring the satisfaction that my soul is really craving. That maybe God has resourced me to be a resource in the world, to answer someone else's prayer. Give me, Lord, my daily bread. Not knowing God's positioning me to be a helpful solution for what's going on in someone across the street, down the street, around the world, all that stuff. I love what Paul says about this secret. He says, I know what it means to be in need. I get it. I have prayed that prayer before. Give me my daily bread. I don't know where it's coming from. I also know what it means to have plenty. That Paul says, I've had this varied life experience where some seasons I've had more than enough and other seasons I've not had enough. And I know the sort of the chasm between that, and it feels like there's an invitation for both of those. I have learned the secret of being, let's say it together, content. In every situation, well-fed or hungry, living in plenty or in want, there is a secret to it, that this is a mystery of the kingdom. Brad Nelson, who taught here a few weeks ago, says it best in his book. It's the posture of the heart that says, I don't need more to be at peace. Paul experienced life with much, and Paul experienced life with little, but what mattered more than anything was life with Jesus. And my challenge to you this morning is that if you have life with much right now, there is an invitation for contentment and generosity to solve other people's prayers. And if you are at a place right now where you have little, there is an invitation here. That is not a problem. That is an invitation to be radically dependent and desperate for the presence and power of God in your life. And he will deliver, because that's what God does. For some here today, this prayer is for you. Maybe it's bread in the form of income, or a new job, or a home, or a friend. We are friend poor in our society, walking around lonely, and we feel it. It's dependence for daily bread. We have a prayer wall here. As you come to the table this morning, I think one of the invitations is to say, Lord, I just submit this prayer to you. And Lord, I just want to invite you to meet this need today. That takes risk, to put God's character on trial and to say, I'm going to take Jesus at his word. I'm going to pray for daily bread and see what God does. Not out of a demanding heart, out of a desire to see God be God in your life. The second is this. It's that God, this prayer is through you. And it's the invitation for some here today of, God, help me to notice someone's cry for daily bread. Do you know what contentment does? It settles the noise of my striving to where my ears are attuned, where I can begin to hear the needs of other people. And it's not that those needs weren't happening. It's that I was so busy in the noise of my striving and accruing that I forgot to pay attention to the cries of the world. So when you learn to grow in contentment, what you're going to notice is what's been happening all along, is the world crying out. And God saying, I've got someone in mind because I've given them much. And they can help because they're mine and their hearts are mine. Contentment slows our lives to notice. Before coming to the daily bread that Jesus gives us at the Eucharist table, which means thanksgiving, a table of thanks, I want to invite my friend Brad Gray to give the final word.
In direct contrast to the Roman mentality of, it's my bread, my seed, my things, Jesus is calling his followers to a completely different approach. He says, give us this day our daily bread. It's in the plural. In fact, the entire prayer is in the plural, beginning with our Father. The Lord's Prayer was intended to be communal. And Jesus is speaking to a people whose identity goes all the way back to the time of Abraham, when in Genesis 12, God says, I'm going to bless the whole world through you. God meets their needs so they can go out and meet the needs of others. And if the ethos of the kingdom of heaven is communal, then this phrase points to the community taking care of each other. Jesus is inviting his followers with abundance to be generous with those who are in need. Because if Jesus' followers are practicing generosity, everyone has their daily bread. And Jesus alludes to this later in the Sermon on the Mount.
So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well.
The only way this is possible is if God is working through the community, and the community is willing to be a conduit. Because when this system of generosity is functioning well, it sets everyone free to focus on bringing the kingdom of heaven here.